David stood between two hospital beds. On his left lay Hannah, the woman who saved his faith. On his right, Rachel, the woman who saved his life. Both unconscious, both dying. The fluorescent lights above buzzed like a swarm of dying flies, and somewhere down the hall, a machine beeped in rhythm with his racing heart. The doctor's words echoed in his skull. "We only have one surgical team available. Both patients need immediate surgery. You have to choose who goes first. Whoever waits might not make it." He was 29 years old, and he was being asked to play God. Hannah's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. There was blood matted in her dark hair, glass embedded in her cheek. Rachel's hand hung off her bed, fingers still curled as if reaching for something. Her engagement ring, the one he'd given her sister, caught the light. This moment didn't come from nowhere. It came from a prayer he should never have prayed. 10 minutes. That's all he had. 10 minutes to decide which sister lived and which one might die because he couldn't make up his mind fast enough. "Mr. Chun," the surgeon's voice cut through his paralysis. "We need your decision now." David's hands trembled. His throat closed. He looked at Hannah, then Rachel, then back again. How does anyone make this choice? How does anyone choose between two souls when loving both of them had already torn his own soul in half? "I can't," he whispered. "Sir, every second counts. I can't be God." His voice cracked. "Triage them like you would any other patients. You're the doctors. You decide." The surgeon's face hardened with something between respect and disgust. "Professional duty one. We'll take the elder sister first. Her injuries are more severe." Hannah. They were taking Hannah. David watched as nurses swarmed around her bed, releasing brakes, disconnecting monitors, wheeling her toward the OR. She disappeared through double doors that swung shut with a pneumatic hiss. Final. Absolute. He turned to Rachel. Still unconscious. Still bleeding internally. Still waiting. Still alive. For now. He collapsed into the chair between the empty bed and the one that held the woman he'd hurt most. His hands found his face. His shoulders shook. A nurse touched his arm gently. "The chapel is down the hall. Third door on the left." He walked like a ghost through sterile corridors that smelled of antiseptic and other people's emergencies. The chapel was small, dark, empty. 6 pews. A simple wooden cross. A table with fake flowers. David fell to his knees. "God, I don't know your will. I don't hear your voice. I'm just a man who loves 2 women and can't bear to lose either. If they both die, it's my fault. If they both live, I still don't know what to do. But I'm done pretending I have answers. Whatever happens next, I surrender." Before the accident, before the engagement, before Guatemala, before everything fell apart, there was a boy who thought he knew what faith looked like. David Chin grew up as a pastor's kid in a strict evangelical home where every decision was filtered through scripture and every mistake was a sermon illustration waiting to happen. His father preached about God's unconditional love every Sunday, while conditionally approving everything David did based on how it reflected on the ministry. When David was 19, his mother was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The church rallied. Prayer chains formed. Elders laid hands on her. His father declared from the pulpit that God would heal her because the prayer of the righteous is powerful and effective. She died 6 months later. David's faith died with her. He spent the next 5 years running, from God, from church, from himself. He partied. He slept around. Then came the car accident. Not the one with the sisters. This was his own personal collision with mortality. A drunk driver ran a red light. David's Honda Civic crumpled like paper. He woke up in a hospital bed with a collapsed lung, 3 broken ribs, and a brain that wouldn't stop replaying his mother's final words. "Don't waste your life being angry at God. He's big enough to handle your questions." He went back to church at 24, seeking redemption, seeking purpose, seeking proof that his mother's faith hadn't been wasted. That's where he met Pastor Mark Sullivan. Mark was everything David's father wasn't. Warm, approachable, real. He had this way of making you feel like God spoke directly through him, like every word of counsel came straight from heaven's throne room. He was 52, built like a former athlete gone soft, with silver hair and a smile that could sell prosperity gospel to atheists. "God's not finished with you, son," Mark told him during their first meeting. "He's got plans. Big plans. You just have to be willing to listen and obey." David became Mark's project. Weekly discipleship meetings, accountability partnerships, scripture memory, volunteer opportunities. Within a year, David was leading the young adult ministry. Within 2 years, he was enrolled in seminary part-time, studying to become a youth pastor. He was becoming the perfect Christian man. And perfect Christian men needed perfect Christian wives. That's when he met the Torres sisters. If you're watching this and thinking, where is this going? Hit that subscribe button because this story is about to get complicated in ways you won't see coming. And drop a comment below. Have you ever been torn between two impossible choices? Let me know. Hannah Torres walked into the church's medical mission meeting like she owned the room, not arrogantly, but with the confidence of someone who'd earned her place through sacrifice. She was 29, a missionary doctor who'd spent the last 3 years running a clinic in Guatemala. She was home for 6 months to raise funds and recruit volunteers. David was captivated immediately. She had dark eyes that seemed to see through pretense, olive skin that spoke of long days in the sun, and hands that looked strong enough to save lives. When she talked about her work, the children she'd treated, the villages without clean water, the mothers dying in childbirth, her voice carried a weight that made everyone else's faith feel performative. After the meeting, David approached her. "That was incredible. What you're doing down there, it's real ministry." She smiled, tired but genuine. "It's just obedience. God called," I answered. "I'd love to hear more. Maybe over coffee." "I don't really have time for coffee." She started packing up her laptop. "But if you want to hear more, sign up for the trip. We leave in 3 months. 2 weeks in Guatemala. You'll see everything firsthand." He signed up that night. What he didn't know was that Hannah had noticed him too, had asked Pastor Mark about him, had prayed about whether this could be the man she'd been waiting for, someone who shared her calling, who could be both partner and co-laborer in God's work. What he also didn't know was that Hannah's younger sister was sitting in the back of that same meeting, watching the whole interaction with a sinking feeling in her chest. Rachel Torres was 26, and everything her older sister wasn't. Where Hannah was measured and controlled, Rachel was spontaneous and emotionally raw. Where Hannah served through medicine, Rachel served through music. She led worship at the church, wrote songs about depression and redemption, and ran a support group for teens struggling with mental health. She'd attempted suicide at 16. Hannah had found her in the bathtub, wrists bleeding, eyes already glazing over. Hannah had saved her life that night, called 911, held pressure on the wounds, prayed with a ferocity Rachel had never heard before. Rachel owed Hannah everything, and she'd spent the last 10 years trying to pay back a debt that could never be repaid. So when she saw David talking to Hannah with that look in his eyes, that look of awe and attraction and spiritual hunger, Rachel told herself to be happy for her sister. Hannah deserved love. Hannah deserved everything. But 3 weeks later, when David showed up at worship practice, guitar in hand, asking if he could join the team, Rachel's heart did something she couldn't control. It chose him too. The night she decided to tell him started like any other Wednesday night practice. Rachel led the team through Oceans and Goodness of God, and an original song she'd written called Breathing Underwater. David played rhythm guitar, watching her lead with something like wonder in his eyes. After practice, everyone left except them. "Your songs hit different," David said, coiling cables. "Like you've actually been to the places you're singing about." "I have." Rachel sat on the edge of the stage, legs swinging. Depression is a really convincing liar. It tells you you're drowning when you're actually learning to breathe underwater. "That why you started the support group?" "Yeah. I figured if I could survive it, maybe I could help someone else survive it too." She paused. "Hannah saved my life. Literally. But she doesn't really understand what it's like inside my head. She thinks faith is a decision you make. For me, it's more like a fight you keep fighting." David sat beside her. "I get that. After my mom died, I spent 5 years angry at God. Came back because I almost died too. Sometimes I wonder if I'm here out of faith or just fear. Maybe it's both. Maybe that's okay. They sat in comfortable silence. The sanctuary lights were dimmed. Somewhere the HVAC system hummed. "You're going to Guatemala with Hannah," Rachel said quietly. "Yeah, 3 weeks from now. She likes you. I can tell." David's face did something complicated. "She's amazing. The work she does." But Rachel turned to face him. "But I don't know if I'm that guy. The missionary guy. I'm barely keeping my own faith together." "Maybe you're not supposed to be the missionary guy. Maybe you're supposed to be you." Their eyes met. Something passed between them. A recognition, a possibility, a danger. David looked away first. "I should go? Early day tomorrow." "David." "Yeah. Be careful in Guatemala. Not just physically, emotionally. Hannah's used to getting what she wants because she sacrifices so much for it. She's earned that right. But make sure whatever happens down there is what you actually want, not what you think you should want." He didn't respond, just picked up his guitar case and walked out. Rachel sat alone in the empty sanctuary and prayed a prayer she was ashamed of. "God, if he's supposed to be with Hannah, help me let go. But if he's not, if there's any chance he could be mine, please don't let me sabotage it by staying quiet." 3 weeks before everything fell apart, David boarded a plane to Guatemala with 23 other volunteers and 2 Torres sisters who both loved him but didn't know the other one did. The mission compound sat in the mountains outside Antigua, a cluster of concrete buildings painted bright colors to combat the dust and poverty surrounding them. Hannah's clinic served 5,000 people from 12 villages. She built it from nothing, raised the money, hired the staff, negotiated with local officials, learned Spanish fluently, earned the community's trust. David watched her work and felt simultaneously inspired and inadequate. She sutured wounds without flinching. She diagnosed diseases he'd never heard of. She held dying babies and prayed over them in Spanish while their mothers wept. "You're incredible," he told her one night after a particularly brutal day. They were sitting on the roof of the clinic, stars blazing overhead in a sky unpolluted by city lights. Hannah looked exhausted and beautiful. "I'm just doing what needs to be done. It's more than that. You've given up everything. Comfort, security, a normal life. I haven't given up anything. I've gained everything." She turned to him. "This is what I was made for, David. And I've been praying." She stopped. "Praying what?" "Praying for a partner. Someone who shares this calling. Someone who could build this with me instead of me always building alone." The implication hung in the air between them like humidity before a storm. David should have said something honest. Should have told her he wasn't sure, that he was drawn to her, but maybe for the wrong reasons, that he'd never felt called to missions and wasn't sure he ever would. Instead he said, "I'd like to be that person." She kissed him then. Soft, tentative, tasting like hope and coffee and promises he didn't know if he could keep. What he didn't know was that Rachel was standing in the stairwell, frozen, having come up to tell them dinner was ready. She heard everything, saw everything. The kiss, the promises, the future she'd dreamed about dissolving in front of her eyes. Her hand gripped the stair railing so tight her knuckles went white. Her chest constricted. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't scream. All she could do was watch the man she loved kiss her sister under a sky full of stars that suddenly felt like they were mocking her. And in that moment, Rachel made a decision that would change everything. She turned and walked back down the stairs without making a sound. But she wasn't running away. Not this time. This time, she was going to fight for what she wanted. Because if Hannah could have everything, the mission, the purpose, the calling, the man, then maybe, just maybe, Rachel deserved something too. What Rachel didn't know was that her fight would cost all 3 of them more than any of them were prepared to pay. Because love triangles don't end with everyone getting what they want. Someone always gets hurt. Someone always loses. And sometimes, everyone does. If you need to know what happens next, if you're dying to find out whether Rachel stays silent or whether she tells David the truth, then you need to hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Because part 2 is coming, and I promise you, the moment Rachel confronts David will leave you absolutely shattered. Drop a comment and tell me, Team Hannah or Team Rachel? Who would you choose? Because David's about to make a choice that will destroy one of them. Subscribe now, because you won't want to miss what happens when everything falls apart.